Hello ladies and gentlemen, this is Lyrlian for ESFI World, bringing you a recap of the GSL Season 2 with the first half of Codas round of 32. In Group A, we find Ro32, the SDC, Teja and Jakchi fighting for a spot in the next round. Match 1, DRG lost to the SDC 2-1 in a disappointing series that saw the OGS Terrans simply outplay the reigning GSL champion. The SDC took Game 1 due to some sloppy attacks from DRG, but DRG came back in Game 2 by being able to catch most of the SDC's army on creep and unprepared. Game 3 was more macro oriented, with both players getting quick thirds. Eventually, SDC was able to slow down the economy of the Zerg and beat DRG's dwindling force. In Match 2, Jakchi was going up against Teja, and in a very close Terran vs Terran series, the former champion Jakchi came out ahead by utilizing his great macro abilities and positional knowledge to force Teja to make mistakes and losing trades. Game 3 on Antigua Shipyard, Jakchi showed some perfect example of how smart unit positioning can change the flow of a game by slowly moving up his siege tanks into the enemy base. In Match 3 Old Generations, the SDC took a quick 2-game series off of Jakchi in an exciting TVT. Both games were very close, with players exchanging the lead constantly, but the SDC was able to come out ahead. In Game 2, the SDC was in bad position, but he was able to draw Jakchi's army away from the natural to leave the heart of the former champion's base defenseless. With this win, the SDC advanced to the round of 16. In the losers match, Teja played beautifully and destroyed a shaken Ro32. Teja took Game 1 by having superb marine micro, focusing down the Zerg Ultras before they could even reach his army. In Game 2, DRG was looking sloppy with various mistakes like underproducing investors and building 2 Ultralight caverns that Teja capitalized on and was able to use this advantage to bust into the Zerg base and get the win. In Match 5, Teja knocked out another GSL champion out of Code S. In this match, winning 2 straight games. Team Liquid's newest member played brilliantly in Game 1, overcoming a huge early deficit caused by forgetting to research Tim. He used his precise tank control to take back the lead and stifle the economy of Jakchi, eventually resulting in a GG. Game 2 was very similar, with Teja coming back from a bad situation by not giving up and playing very smart with his marine tank movements. By the time Teja pushed, Jakchi was spread too thin and the Team Liquid Terran was able to crush the force, winning a spot in the round of 16. At the end of Group A, the 2 least likely players came out on top. The SDC and Teja both fought their way out of the group and will advance to the round of 16. Over in Group B, Genius, Bung Bung, Seed, and Supernova were fighting for a spot in the next round, which is of course the round of 16 of Code S. The first match of Group B began with Genius showing his skill with Protoss by beating Bung Bung 2-1. Bung Bung was able to take Game 2 off Genius with some amazing containment that allowed the Zerg to attack 2 Broodlords, which killed everything in Genius' army with ease. Despite the Zerg's good performance, Genius took the other 2 games fairly easily, with solid strategies and some of the best decision making in StarCraft. In the second match, Supernova displayed his great TVP in this quick 2-0 series against the incredible Miracle Protoss Seed. Throughout both games, Supernova abused the mobility of the Protoss army with multi-pronged attacks, even double dropping while hitting an expansion at one point, completely catching the Protoss out of position and taking the series 2-0. In match number 3, Supernova continued to prove how strong his TVP is against the runner-up of Season 1. Genius took Game 1 by forcing engagements and using force fields to force the Terran out of position. Genius pushed for a killing blow, but Supernova defended well and began to push back. But Psystorm finished just in time to melt the over-aggressive Terran army. In Game 2, Genius played a little too risky and lost when a drop killed most of his probes. In the final game, Supernova was able to force Genius into a bad engagement, killing all of his Colossus quickly with Vikings. Supernova's impressive PvT won in the match and earned him a spot in the round of 16. In match number 4, Seed completely destroyed Bung Bung in the quickest series of the night with some nicely timed pressure in Game 1 and a well executed 4-gate in Game 2. On towards the last match of the day, Genius is going up against Seed, and despite PvP being Genius' worst matchup, he was able to make the final series of Group B against Seed 2-1. Code S finalist Genius utilized Phoenixes in Game 1 to give himself uncontested map vision and a counter to Seed's fast Colossus tech. In Game 2, Genius waited too long to do Blink Observer all in and lost to Siege huge immortal count. Genius showed his confidence in Game 3 when he decided to try a build similar to Game 2, but this time he was successful by utilizing fast Blink to snipe observers and take other stalkers out, giving him the edge leading up to the final Colossus versus Colossus engagement and take a spot in the round of 16. That will do it for Group B, where Genius and Supernova are advancing to the round of 16, both demonstrating their superior decision-making as an important element of their victories. In Group C, Marine King continued his string of dominant performances by winning that group. This was a milestone for him, as it was the first time he had ever advanced past the first round of Code S twice in a row. Marine King's first match was against the Liquid Zerg Zenio. Game 1 ended in a base trade that Marine King won, despite going down to just 6 SCVs. In the second game, Marine King did early economic damage with a fleet of Hellions, and then destroyed his opponents in Econ and rolled across the map with a maxed Thor Hellion army. Zenio did not have an answer, so GG'd. In the winner's match, Marine King got off to a bad start by losing the first game to July. He played overly risky against the always aggressive Zerg and did not make enough turrets to deal with the huge Mutalisk tech switch. Suddenly down 15 SCVs, Marine King was forced to make a bad attack that was easily crushed by July's Banelings. In the second game, July's aggression was his downfall. After securing a solid lead with an impressive army flank, July tried to batter into Marine King's bases with Roaches and Banelings. Marine King had plenty of tanks and Thors to defend though, and after several poor attacks, July was down 40 supply. He soon conceded. Of course, since he hadn't gone all in yet that match, July tried a Roach Baneling all in Game 3. Marine King defended perfectly with Hellions and closed out the match 2-1, advancing to the next round. July had beaten Alive in the first match of the group. It had been an odd one, where poor decision making against aggression seemed to lose each game. July had fewer mistakes and so had won 2-1, sending Alive to face Zenio in the losers match. In the first game of the losers match against Zenio, Alive seemed to have the game under control until Broodlords came out. Alive had built hardly any Vikings and had forgotten to expand to a fourth, so his resources ran dry just as he needed the tech switch the most. In the second game, Alive stayed on the offensive, continuously outmaneuvered his opponent Zenio. Despite some nasty fungals, Alive seemed to have a supply lead all game, as Zenio had to constantly use Larva for defense. One game away from elimination, Zenio seemed to be in trouble early in Game 3. A double bunker from Alive killed Zenio's expansion attree and put the Zerg on his back foot. But Zenio kept his cool and took map control against Hellions with Roaches and Banelings. Zenio used his position to double expand to bring the base count 4-2 in his favor. From there, he teched to Broodlords, which Alive was again not ready for. The win set up a ZVZ in the final match between Zenio and July. ZVZ is by far July's worst matchup and it's Zenio's best, statistically. But July is a much more accomplished player, so nobody seemed to know who would win. Game 1 reflected this odd balance. Zenio overran July with early Roaches, but July got ahead in the mid-game by using Mutalisk to take some map control, do some damage. Zenio tipped the balance back in his favor with a great set of fungal growths on July's Roaches, but Zenio ended up overcommitting to Fragile Infestors and Hydralisk. July managed to hit the perfect balance of Roaches and Hydralisks and Infestors to break the back of Zenio's army and take the game. Game 2 was a simple matter of miss micro by July, costing him the game, but July managed to make a comeback in the final game of the group with a double queen snipe. The critical kills put July at a big enough economic advantage that he had an easy time closing out the match, and July advanced to the second round of Code S for the first time since August of last year. That's gonna do it for Group C, where MKP and July are advancing, both demonstrating their superior decision making as an important element of their victories. In Group D, Maru, the youngest player ever in Code S, managed to beat both Gumiho and Hero in tough matches to advance past his first ever GSL group. Hero came in second in the group, losing to Maru but beating Curious twice. In his Code S debut, Maru lost to Gumiho's off-the-wall aggression. Using the same tactics that got him to the last season's semi-finals, Gumiho landed a huge Viking army in Maru's mineral line. As Maru retreated to defend, Gumiho hit Maru's third with Hellions. In all, 40 of Maru's SCVs died. Maru had to attack in response, but when his siege line failed, he had to GG out. It looked like last season's semi-finalist had the match in the bag for a while in Game 2. His bio and constant aggression flanked and outflanked his meching opponent, securing him a lead in bases, but Gumiho never went for the killing blow, instead taking to multiple Ghost Academies for nukes. This allowed Maru to max off of mech and perform a single siege push that ended the game before a single nuclear war had dropped. Gumiho let up on his aggression for some reason, so Maru just made mech against Gumiho's bio army, set up a siege and won. Hero beat Curious in his first match of the group and seemed confident going into his match against the young Terran. His confidence proved to be founded in the first game. Maru tried a crazy 2 Rex tank medevac 1 base all in. position that Hero easily held with a 1-gate expand and Immortals, but in game 2 it was Hero's early pressure that failed, leaving him with a lot of ground to make up. He tried teching to everything at once, going Zealot Archon with Storms and Charge and double upgrades all in the span of a couple of minutes. Unfortunately for him, Maru had gotten Ghost with Cloak, and the one thing Hero didn't get was detection. In the final game, Maru took a trick out of Gumio's book. He kept up constant, hectic aggression all game that resulted in a 2-pronged attack that caught Hero's main army in the natural, while both Hero's main and third got wrecked. Hero conceded, and Maru was in his first Codas round of 16. Curious, who lost to Hero in his first match, smashed Gumio 2-0 in the losers match. Gumio played passive in both games and never had a good answer to the Broodlords that inevitably came. Gumio actually tried Ghosts in one game, but the nerf proved to have done its job quite well. Gumio's loss marked him as the third of last season's semi-finalists to go out 0-2 in his group so far, leaving only Genius for a potential repeat. Hero and Curious played 5 games together in this group, so let's look at them as a whole. In game 1, Hero actually got the new Phoenix range and Carriers and Colossi. It turned out to be a bizarre but deadly combination in which Curious, Mutalisks and Corruptors had no chance. Game 2 was the only game Curious won. He did it by forcing Sentries and Immortals with a mass of roaches, and then tech switching hard into Mutas and crippling Hero before he could compensate. Curious lost the last game by teching to Broodlords without any ground support at all. The Broodlords were promptly destroyed, which is what sent Curious to the losers match. Hero won the rematch pretty easily. Curious lost one of the games by again losing his Mutalisk to Phoenixes and then his Broodlords to Stalkers. Hero won the second game by fending off early roach aggression and then blinking into Curious base with a sizable Stalker army. Hero's force fields to protect his blinking attack force were amazing, and Hero finished off that match 2-0. Hero ended up going 4-1 against Curious in the group. And that's gonna do it for Group D, where Maru and Hero are advancing to the next round. After a night of epic matches advancing to the round of 16, we have the SDC and Teja out of Group A. Out of Group B, we've got Genius and Supernova. In Group C, it was MKP and July coming out on top. And finally, Maru and Hero for Group D. That'll do it for the first 4 groups of Code S. Don't forget to check us out when we cover the last 4 groups of the round of 32. For more coverage and news around esports, find us on Twitter at ESFI and on the web at esfiworld.com. Until next time, this has been Lyrlian with ESFI World.